الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So my name is Muhammad Iqbal Hamidullah bin Muhammad, matric number 183331. So from the scenes that we have watched before, so that is the reality that we have in our campus, which is the Iium Kuantan campus. So from that reality, we plan to do a survey on the number of times performing congregational prayer among CFS Iium students, specifically for brothers. So what is the objective of our study? So the first objective is to build the awareness among the CFSII student brothers about performing congregational prayer. And the other objective is we want to find the main reason that why the students can perform their prayer congregationally. So we divide our questions in the survey into two types of data, which is the quantitative data and qualitative data. So for quantitative data, we have 3 questions on it, which is the first, the number of times performing congregational prayer for a student in a week. And the second is how often the student perform their subuh prayer congregationally in a week. And the third, how much time usually that a student have to spend to do their congregational prayer in a day. And for the qualitative data, we also have 3 questions on it. So the first is where is the place that the students tend to do their congregational prayer in a day, and the second is which prayer that the students tend to do that prayer congregationally, and the third is what are the circumstances that the students face to perform their congregational prayer in CFS. So the sampling technique that we applied in this survey is the quota sampling technique, whereby we gather the representative from each of the group. To be more specific, we use the uncontrolled quota sampling technique, whereby we distributed the survey form, which that we use the Google form, that we distributed it to each of the representative from each group, and that representative will only pass the survey form to only 15 of their friends. So there are also some difficulties that we face to do this survey. So one of the difficulties is that because we done this survey on the holiday, so the students are reluctant to open their phone and to answer the survey. So we actually lack of the respondents at the early of our survey. So what we applied to overcome this problem is that we personally chat any of our friends from each of the courses to answer the questions.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Iqbal bin Abdul matric number 183335. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Okay, so as we know, when we conduct a survey, it is difficult for us to collect the data from all the population. So what we do, we just collect a sample, and in our survey, we collect a sample of 124 respondents of CFS Iium male students in Kuantan campus. So after 1 week conducting our survey, this is our raw data. So after we have checked for the outliers, there is no outliers for our data, and we can next move to construct the frequency table. Okay, to construct a frequency table, first we need to determine the class width, and this can be done by subtracting the max value of our data with the mean value and divided it with the number of class that we want. And for our survey, the max value that we have is 34 and the mean value is 1, and divided by the number of class that we want, which is 7. And lastly, we will get the class width of our survey is 5. So when we have the class width, we can construct the frequency table, and we can start to analyze all the data. Okay, how we can analyze the data? We can collect all the frequency within the class width, and we can construct a table like this. Okay, to construct a frequency table, first we need to determine the class width, and this can be done by subtracting the max value of our data with the mean value and divided it with the number of class that we want. And for our survey, the max value that we have is 34 and the mean value is 1, and divided by the number of class that we want, which is 7. And lastly, we will get the class width of our survey is 5, and you can see like this. as you can see, as shown in the table before, we can determine the mean, we can determine the variance, standard deviation, mode, and also median. For example, we can calculate the mean using the formula of total number of frequency times the midpoint divided by the total number of frequency. Okay, from our survey, we get the total number of frequency times the midpoint, 2058, and divided by the total number of frequency, which is 124, and finally, we will get the average, or the mean is 16.60.
So my name is Muhammad Habib Wimudi. My metric number is 183312. So let's continue. So this table of frequency, we can classify it as group frequency distribution. It is because the data have a large range of data, whereby the data we can group it into classes according to its size. So basically, group frequency distribution can be represented in a graphical method in three types of graph, which is the first one, histogram, and second one is frequency polygon, and the third one is ogive. Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is histogram. So basically, the component of histogram, the y-axis indicates the number of students, while the x-axis indicates the class boundaries. So basically, if we construct the histogram, we can know the shape of distribution of the data, and also the histogram enabling us to determine the squareness and the spreadness of the data. So the second one is frequency polygon. Basically, frequency polygon and histogram have the same functions, which is to represent the shape of distribution and to determine the spreadness and squareness of the data. But for frequency polygon, the component of y-axis is same as histogram, which is number of students. But for the x component, it indicates the midpoint of the class boundaries. Then the third one is ogive, but it's a little bit different from the frequency polygon and histogram. But actually, ogive is also known as accumulative frequency polygon, because the y-axis, the vertical axis, indicates the accumulative frequency, while the x-axis indicates the class boundaries. From the ogive, we can determine the median, the quartiles, and also the percentile. So the next part, I will explain about the graphical representing for qualitative equation and also ungrouped frequency distribution. So let's go. Okay, for qualitative data and ungrouped frequency distribution, we always represent in a graphical method by graph, for example, pie chart and also bar chart. So this is the bar chart, which is the bar chart of number of performing subuh congressionally. So from the graph, unfortunately, there is 33.9% of the students do not perform the subuh congressionally. So the second one is pie chart on places students usually perform congressionally prayer. And we can conclude from the pie chart that there is 58.9% of the students perform the prayer at Mahala Activity Center, MEC 1. So the next pie chart is a pie chart on the circumstances faced by students to perform congressional prayer. And from the pie chart, we can conclude that 36.3% of the students choose the biggest circumstances that they face is the great distance between the Mahala and the common prayer room, such as Mahala Activity Center 1. So the last is the bar chart about the period of congressional prayer. So from the survey, from the chart, we can conclude that 33.9% of the students said that mostly the time that someone usually spend on performing the 5 daily congressional prayer is about is between 15 to 30 minutes only.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Amaidan Yahudi, 183277. Okay, so for the conclusion, the result of the survey is satisfying, but the student must improve their frequency going to go to congressional prayer in a week, because Based on the result, 10% of the students did not perform congregational prayer at all in a week. Okay, so for the data analysis, first, the average of students who perform their congregational prayer in a week 16.60 times, and then the majority of students perform their congregational prayer in a week 12.09 times, and the last 50% of students perform their congregational prayer in a week 15.38 times. So that's all. So based on the survey, the biggest circumstance that students face to perform their congregational prayer in a week is the great distance between the mahala and the common prayer hall, which is Mek1 or mosque. So our suggestion for this problem is, first, students must bring their own motorcycle or bicycle for them to make them easier to get to mosque or Mek1 to perform their congregational prayer. And then the second suggestion is Iium management must provide some public transport for students, so they can perform their congregational prayer frequently. So that's our suggestion. So that's all our conclusion.
Allah.
Okay. Okay, so for the last, the examination that we can do from the survey is, the hadith from Rasulullah SAW. As-salatu jam'ah afdalu min salati al-fardh bi 27 darajah, which means prayer for the congregation is more important than prayer alone, as many as 27 degrees. Rawahu Bukhari and Muslim. So as we know, we get many benefit from doing congregational prayer, so that we must do congregational